Good morning, or actually, good afternoon. Welcome back to Minding My Mental Health. I'm trying to get started on Instagram, so that's why I was taking just a moment. Okay, I think we're rocking and rolling. So, welcome back to Minding My Mental Health. I am Tanitria Williams here for our weekly episode of Minding My Mental Health. I'm really excited about today's topic because it's a topic that I love to talk about, and that is about communication. So, today we're going to talk about 10 killers to healthy communication. So, I want you to hashtag live if you are watching us live. I want you to share this broadcast to your story, to your page. If you're watching on Instagram, I want you to share this. Let me know where you're watching from: Facebook, YouTube. But again, hashtag live and let me know what city and what platform you're watching on. I'm actually going to share this broadcast myself. So give me just one moment to share this to a couple groups that I belong to. Okay, and then I'm going to tag a couple of people as well. Again, hashtag live. Let me know you're here with us today. Okay, I'm going to give people just a few moments to jump on. I see my cousin Tammy's here. Hey, Tammy, how are you? I'm going to just tag a couple more people. All right. You guys know how I like to go ahead and get started, and I know that people can always go back and catch the replay. So, again, today we're talking about communication. Why are we talking about communication? Because communication really is such a big part of our life in general, right? And it's not just in like romantic relationships. Communication is the foundation for really good relationships. So, we're talking about 10 killers to healthy communication, or top 10 killers to healthy communication. Now, the truth is, there are a lot of things that can stop healthy communication. I chose these top 10. There are some more. We may get into those a little bit later as we continue. But again, let's jump into it. So, before we talk about 10 things that kill communication, let's just talk about what healthy communication really is. To me, healthy communication is when people are able to communicate. And we say communicate, we mean give and receive clear messages. So get the giving and receiving of clear messages in a way that is respectful and genuine. So I'm going to read that again. What is healthy communication? This is kind of my definition, but when people are able to communicate, which is to give and receive clear messages in a way that is respectful and genuine. That is how I define clear communication. So communication is, again, it needs to be clear, it needs to be honest, and it needs to be respectful. So why is healthy communication important? Why is healthy communication important? I'm going to share a couple reasons why it's so important, and then we're going to get into those top 10 communication killers. If you've ever had a situation where you were struggling to communicate with someone, let me know in the comments. Just say me or put a 1 or something in the comment to let me know you too have had issues with communicating with people. And sometimes it's just a different style, and you have to get used to people's style, right? But these are certain things that I think as you learn these things, they're going to improve your communication overall. So, why is healthy communication important? Number one, it's the foundation of healthy relationships. And again, we're talking relationships. We're not just talking romantic relationships. We are talking about across the board. So, this could be at work. This could be your friendships. This could be communicating with friends and family, communication in general relationships. It's the foundation for healthy relationships. Clear and respectful communication helps people to feel understood and valued, and it helps to deepen the connection, right? If you're always feeling like there's a misunderstanding, you're usually not very connected to that person. And so healthy communication helps to deepen your relationships and to strengthen your relationships. Number two, it helps to prevent or to clarify misunderstandings. How many times have you said or done something and realized what you were saying and what you were doing was not understood correctly, or what the other person was saying or doing was not communicated correctly? Healthy communication helps us to clarify and to decrease, and sometimes in some situations eliminate misunderstandings. By expressing your thoughts and feelings in a direct yet respectful way, people are less likely to misinterpret what's said, thus reducing confusion and unnecessary conflict. um, it's always interesting to me when you have people communicating, and sometimes from the outside we can see where the miscommunication comes from and they can't see it, and you will see go up, he's thinking this thing and she's thinking that thing, and because that wasn't very clear, they're both frustrated with the other person. In reality, sometimes they actually have the same goal, but because it's not clearly communicated, it gets frustrating. We were out with friends, and both the husband and the wife were both ready to leave, but they had some miscommunication, and so they were in two different places, thinking that they were waiting on the other person to leave. And when they finally left, they both were saying, I've been ready. And the other person says, no, I've been ready. I was waiting on you. And so we all kind of laughed about it. But the reality is that's just a clear example of how, if you communicate very clearly, we can eliminate or at least decrease some conflict and misunderstandings. So number one, it's a healthy foundation for healthy relationships. Two, it prevents or clarifies misunderstandings. Number three, it helps to resolve conflict. Hey, Venetia, how are you? Helps to resolve conflict. So it says healthy communication allows us to talk about tough issues and allow those to be discussed openly and constructively, which helps us to find mutually satisfying solutions. Okay, so many times when you're talking conflict, people don't understand that they are better if they're working together, right? And so if you learn how to help communicate in a healthy way, it's more likely that you're going to get to a place where you're both satisfied. You both walk away feeling like it's a win-win and not a win-lose. And if you're in a relationship, you want those relationships, you want those situations to you want to walk away from those situations feeling like we were both able to win, and not just he won all the time or I win all the time, because that's going to open the door for resentment, which we're not getting into today. But that's one of the things that can definitely damage relationships. Another benefit of healthy communication is that it fosters trust. When people communicate honestly and openly, it creates a foundation of trust, which is crucial for a relationship to thrive. A lot of people struggle with trust. And the better you are with being able to communicate your thoughts, being able to communicate your feelings, it's going to give you a firmer foundation of trust, which again is one of the building blocks for a healthy relationship. The next thing, we have two more benefits of healthy communication, or why these are so important. It promotes emotional well-being. Being able to share your thoughts and feelings in a safe environment helps us to improve our emotional health and reduce our feelings of loneliness and frustration. Think about it. A lot of times people isolate because they don't feel understood. They say they shut down because they don't feel safe enough to communicate. But if they are in a place where they can actually be open and honest and communicate their feelings and know that they're not going to be judged or tossed aside and be respected, even if there is a disagreement, they're more open. Thus, they're more likely to decrease isolation and again, increase that connection with the other people. So keeping feelings inside because we don't have a safe place can cause us to have internal stress, right? And so you want to make sure that you are working on your communication, because it really does help your overall mental health. And the last thing we're going to talk about, again, I'm sure there are plenty of more reasons why healthy communication is important, but I just want to talk about these six. Another thing is it encourages collaboration. Healthy communication enhances cooperation and teamwork, leading to better outcomes and productivity. If you have someone and there's constant misunderstanding all the time, if you're dealing with a situation where there's constant frustration because there's always that misunderstanding, you don't want to work with those people. And so the better communication you have, you're going to have more collaboration. Think about if you're married, you want to be able to collaborate and work with your spouse. If you're in a work environment, you want to be able to work well with your coworkers, your boss. This is why we're talking about this, because honestly, the way we communicate has a huge part of how it impacts our mental health. Because if you can't communicate, you're going to have a lot of conflict oftentimes, or again, you're going to shut down and be lonely. Both of those can fuel anxiety, depression, frustration, irritation, all of those things. And so this is a part of minding our mental health. Learning these skills help us to be able to deal with our emotions in a healthy way. So let's jump in and talk about some communication killers. Okay. So the first one, and I want you guys really taking notes and talk back to me in the comments. If you have comments or questions throughout this, please don't hesitate to put in the comment section. So again, the first problem we're talking about is interrupting. Now, I know this seems simple, right? It seems super simple for us to say, well, of course you're not supposed to interrupt, but we do it quite often. So why is this a problem? Someone cutting you off when you're not finished talking indicates they're not fully listening, right? And trust me, most of us have been guilty of some of these things. So this is not a you're a bad person type of teaching today. This is an awareness teaching so that we can have it at the forefront of our mind so we can continue to grow in this area. So interrupting, cutting someone off often indicates that we're not fully listening. And when we are listening just to respond and not to fully understand. So an example is a friend is mid-sentence and we just jump in and start solving their problem or telling them how they were wrong or whatever. One of the ways that you can stop that is to, number one, be aware of it, right? The second thing is to practice active listening. What is active listening? Active listening is where you are fully engaged in the process of listening. You're listening to gain understanding. You're asking clarifying questions. You're looking at them. Why do I say look at? We're going to get into being distracted later, but you're looking at them. You're engaging in that conversation. You're paraphrasing what you hear. You are fully being active in the process of listening. So that will help you not to interrupt, because the goal of active listening is to try to learn and understand what the person is communicating. So the first thing is interrupting is one of the things that will kill healthy communication. So go ahead and put that in the comments. I don't want to interrupt. Number two, this is a big one. Criticism and blame. Criticism and blame. What is criticism and blame? It is when you take the responsibility and you put everything on someone else, or you talk about how they messed everything up. The problem with this is that blaming causes the other people to either shut down or get defensive. If I bring up issue to you, and I see this a lot when I'm working with couples, if I bring an issue up and you start to blame me, after a while, I'm going to say, I'm going to even bring it up, because you are going to do what? You're going to put it back on me. Then they start to feel like they're not heard. They start to say, why bother? The other thing is oftentimes they get defensive. So if you start to blame me, I'm going to get defensive. The problem with that is it shifts the focus from actually solving the issue to that other person being defensive, and now the issue doesn't get resolved, and now we're just going back and forth with each other. So blaming oftentimes shuts down constructive conversation. So here's an example of what to do rather than to blame. Number one, use I messages. This is how I'm feeling. This is what I need. Also take responsibility. So when you are, if someone says you didn't wash the dishes, you don't have to come up with something else. You know what? I did not wash the dishes. Taking responsibility and not to blame someone else. Well, I didn't wash them because you didn't do this other thing. Take ownership of your part in that situation. Okay. Number three, stonewalling. Ooh, this one is such a big killer, because there's nowhere for the other person to go. So what is stonewalling? Stonewalling is when you basically withdraw or shut down communication altogether. So you give the person the silent treatment. I'm not talking about it again. You're just refusing to be involved in that conversation. What does this do if I'm trying to work through something? It makes me feel like I'm hitting a wall. Yeah, someone says in the comments, Tam said, if I know I'm going to be blamed, I shut down or I'm guarded with my conversation if I do talk. Exactly, because no one wants to go into that communication being blamed. So let's get back to stonewalling. Stonewalling says withdrawing from the conversation or giving the silent treatment to avoid resolving issues. So an example is a partner refuses to talk during an argument, which of course is going to lead to frustration. Here's what I tell people: take a timeout. If you feel like you are about to shut down due to this conversation, say, you know what, right now I'm not going to be very productive. Let me take a timeout. Now, what's the difference between a timeout and stonewalling? A timeout is an allotted amount of time for you to take a break to regulate your body. Why are you taking the time out? To regulate your body, to gather your thoughts so that you can come back and have productive conversation. The goal of stonewalling is to shut the other person out. That's the difference. A timeout is a brief pause so you can regulate your body and gather your thoughts. The goal of stonewalling is to shut the other person out, and there is no time frame. So a timeout should be a short period of time. You know you're going to come back. You tell the person, hey, I just need a short break so I can calm myself, and we're going to come back in 15 minutes or right after work, we can have this conversation. So it is the person who's trying to talk, they don't feel like you're just abandoning them. But the person who needs that break, they don't feel like they have to push through even in a time when they're feeling emotionally dysregulated. So again, it's really important that you communicate. Our key word today: communicate. Hey, I need a short break. Your break should not be 3 days. Your break should not be over a day. Your break probably shouldn't be half a day. It's just a few minutes to just calm your body, come back. Now, we understand some issues are bigger than others, and it may take you more than 15 or 20 minutes to calm down, or 5 or 10 minutes. That's okay. You need to communicate. This may take a little bit longer. Can we talk about this after work, after I've gone to work and been able to kind of get this off of my mind? We can talk about this after dinner. But if you need that break, you need to communicate that, and you need to have a time when you will be available, ready to talk about it. Okay, so you want to make sure that you don't stonewall. The next thing is being defensive. How many of you have ever been in a situation and you could feel yourself getting defensive? I know I have. So defensiveness, the problem is that you're just justifying your actions and you're shifting blame, and it doesn't really cause you to take ownership or responsibility. You just start defending what you did and trying to justify it. So justifying your actions typically happens with the defensive attitude. An example may be if someone says, I don't help out around the house because I have to do this other stuff. Okay, calm down. All we're asking for you to do is to pick up after yourself. We know you have other things to do. We also have other things to do. But when you're defensive, you can't hear or even try to understand other people's perspective. So one of the solutions I would say is, again, take responsibility, apologize if necessary, and come up with a plan of action that works for you. It does not mean that you are bad. And I think this is the key for a lot of people. When they hear criticism, they often internalize it to mean that the other person thinks that they are bad. Okay, they think something's wrong with me. And so instead of interpreting feedback as something's wrong with me, what is an actionable item that I can do to move me forward, to help me in this situation? Does that make sense? So if I say, hey, I need more help, rather than saying, well, I can't help because I got school and I've got this and I've got that. Okay, I need more help. They are not attacking me. They're simply asking me to step up. What can I do to help more? They may say, I need you to start washing dishes. And you say, well, actually, the dishes is going to be a problem because of this reason. However, I can do this thing. Would that be helpful? Do you see the difference in that? That defensiveness is automatically going to shut that person down, most likely. They're not going to be open, which is going to impact the overall health of the relationship. Is this helping y'all? Tell me. I'm not seeing much comments. So let me know if this is helping. If you have comments or questions, talk back to me today. So I want to go over number 5 and then we'll recap the first 5. The next one was overgeneralization. This is when you use words like always and never. Here's the problem with these, what I call absolute words. The problem with the absolutes is they are usually going to cause you to lie. Okay. Let me explain. If I say, you never help out. That statement is typically not true. And here's what else happens if you use absolutes. When you say always, never, everybody, or nobody, those types of absolute words, the other person goes through their mental Rolodex to find the exception of the absolute that you just said. So, again, if I say, you never help out around here, the other person is going to go through their mental Rolodex of, when was the last time I helped out? Oh, at the birthday party last year. So they get focused and almost fixated on that one time or those 5 times. And now it discredits your actual request, which is for more help. So a better way to say that, rather than saying you never help out, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed, going back to that I message. I'm feeling overwhelmed and I would like for you to do this one thing or this specific thing. Be clear without the absolutes. Or I feel like I'm doing the majority of the work. Okay. I would like for you to do these things. That is going to get you a much better result without being offensive than you don't help around here. You never do this. Everybody always does this. Nobody ever does this. These absolutes, again, causes that listener to go into a search mode of that exception. And then they fixate on the exception, which makes your argument seem like either a lie, an exaggeration, or just invalid. And your feelings, your thoughts, they are valid. However, if you use those types of words, it can often make it seem like you're just talking. And so you don't want to do that, because the goal is not to be right. The goal is to be healthy in this communication, right? Okay. So the first 5 problems or killers to healthy communication, we said number 1 was interrupting. 2 was criticism and blame. 3 was stonewalling. 4 was defensiveness. And 5 is overgeneralization. Out of those that I put, I want to know which one of those do you struggle with the most. 1, interpreting the problem. Interrupting. 2, criticism and blaming. 3, stonewalling. 4, defensiveness. Or 5, overgeneralization. Which one of those do you find that you struggle with the most, or that you recognize that you do the most? I'm going to give people just a few minutes to put their numbers in the comment section. We have 5 more. Those are the first 5. Let's get into the next 5. So number 6 is the lack of empathy. This is when the person is no longer trying to understand the other person's feelings. They are just trying to jump in there and get their point across, right? So the problem is you're not trying to understand the person's feelings, which could lead to disconnection. So for an example, it may be ignoring a friend's feelings. If you say things like, oh, that's not a big deal. They say, it really hurt my feelings when this thing happened. And we go, that's not a big deal. Well, it was a big deal to your friend, and we have to be able to acknowledge that. Or saying you're stressing over nothing, or you're minimizing it, and you don't have the ability to say, hey, I understand. Or even if you don't fully understand, right? Because I don't want people lying. You may say, I don't understand, but I see you're upset. So one way to help when you truly don't understand is to say, I don't understand, but I can see that it bothers you, right? So you're still acknowledging and validating their experience. The lack of empathy, oftentimes when you have very different experiences from a person, think about men and women and our bodies and how we experience things in our bodies, right? And so there are things that I may fully not be able to understand from a male perspective, and vice versa. I don't necessarily have to go, oh, you men are just weak, or you women are just this. That is not having any empathy. It's, hey, I don't fully understand, but what you're telling me is that's really sensitive, or that's really hurtful. I've man up, do this, don't do this. If someone's coming to you and they're being vulnerable, if you don't have empathy, most of the time they're not going to do it. I actually asked a question on social media a couple weeks ago, and I asked the men why, for those who didn't open up to their spouses, why not, or to their family. And many said it was that fear of, number 1, it being brought back up in an argument. You don't want to do that. You don't want to take something that someone says in a vulnerable moment and and bring it back at a time when you're angry. That is going to get that person to shut down and probably not trust you again. But also, it's this lack of empathy of saying, oh, you're a man, so this should not bother you. If your husband, if your brother, if they say, hey, it does bother me, for you not to say, well, it shouldn't bother you, that's dismissing their feelings. It does bother them. Allow them a safe place to be able to say, this bothers me without dismissing it and without having a lack of empathy. So practice empathy by validating their emotions and to see why they're upset. Empathy does not mean you have to understand, and it also doesn't mean you have to agree with it, right? And I think that's important. Oftentimes we feel like if we don't agree, we can't validate the experience. What you can do is validate their feelings. Hey, I understand that really hurt you, even if maybe it wouldn't have hurt you as the speaker. Maybe it wouldn't have bothered you at all, but you can say, I see that really bothered you. Let's talk about it, giving them a safe place. Number 7 says assuming or mind reading. Why is this a problem? Because we can't do either very well. Assuming what someone thinks or feels without asking them is going to cause more confusion. I know she's mad at me because she didn't do this, or I know he said it because of this. If you didn't hear it or see it, it's probably a dangerous thing for you to start assuming. Because oftentimes when we are assuming, we are actually projecting our own thoughts, our own feelings onto other people when we make assumptions. The key is to say, do I have any proof or evidence of what is, I guess, what I'm believing? Also, is this something I could just ask a clarifying question? So many times, how many of you have ever gotten into a disagreement or argument or something based on an assumption? Going back to that couple I was talking about where they were both ready to go, but neither of them communicated. They assumed because the other one was still talking in their respective groups. So the guys had kind of peeled off and went to talk to the guys and the ladies, and they could still see each other, right? We were all in a group. But because she was talking to the women and he was talking to the men, they both assumed they're not ready to go. They're not ready to go. In the women's group, I was with the wife, and she said, maybe if we move closer to the vehicle, he'll come. He saw that, made the assumption that, oh, they're getting really deep into the conversation. They've now moved under the tree. Okay. So the assumption was when we moved, for us, the assumption was if they see us moving closer to the vehicles, they will come. The assumption for the male was they're moving under the tree. They're getting more settled in that conversation. We're never going to leave. Where really, hey, we're going to move closer to the vehicle so you will know, so we can be ready to go. If she had said that, or if he had asked the question of, hey, I see you moving. Are you trying to leave, or are you just getting comfortable? Give me some clarity. So asking questions will help decrease the mind reading or assumptions, because oftentimes we make these assumptions and then we're frustrated because what we assumed was not actually the case. We can assume that people are angry with us. We can assume that people dislike us, and oftentimes it is our insecurities being projected. So if someone doesn't speak, we say they must be angry at me, they don't like me. The reality is maybe they didn't see you, or maybe they were kind of in their own head, and when they saw you, yes, they saw you physically with their eyes, but emotionally they weren't really there present. And so what we assume is incorrect, even though it was based on what we saw. Does that make sense? So we saw that the person didn't speak, but we made the assumption as to why they didn't speak, as opposed to just saying, hey, I saw you and I didn't, yes, filling in the blank for the other person. It can be really, really dangerous because we're not the other person and we don't know the way they're thinking about things. All right. Number 8, and this is one that I probably have to check myself on more than any of the rest of these. Number 8, not giving your full attention. I gotta say, this is one, again, my husband calls me out on it, and I have to be more mindful of it to really stay on top of it. Distractions, right? So someone can be talking to you and you can be scrolling through your phone. You can be checking an email. Your mind, really, even if you don't have a device or something physically, your mind can be somewhere else. And so when we're talking about giving our full attention or not giving our full attention, it's important that we say, I have to stop and intentionally engage. One of my daughters, her love language is quality time. And she likes quality time, not just let's watch a movie together. She likes engagement. And I remember this one time she was really young and we were playing a game, but I was distracted. I was playing with her, but my mind was somewhere else. And she says, Mommy, you're not paying attention. I said, Yes, I am. She says, No, you're not. And when she said it, I was like, she's right. I'm actively not really paying full attention. And I said, okay, let mommy put her stuff up. I put my stuff up and I turned to my body. I engaged my body. And so if you find yourself drifting off or not fully paying attention, you have to make a conscious effort to say, I need to remove the distractions. I also need to kind of figure out what I need to focus on and really give that my full attention. Okay. So, why is this important? Because the other person can often feel like they're not important. So they can feel like you don't really care very much. Also, you can miss a lot of good information. And that's usually the case for me. I will have to go back and say, You told me that? I don't remember that. Or, whatever they're saying, we told you. And so you're going to miss out on a lot of really good information that you may need. And so we're talking communication, we're talking work. If you're at work, especially after the pandemic, a lot of companies went to more Zoom meetings and virtual meetings. Those kind of meetings are very easy to get distracted with. You can have your phone, you can, as long as they can see your face, you don't really realize that you're doing all these other things, but then you're responsible for the content. And so at work, you can miss out on important information that you actually need to complete a project or a task if you're distracted. So making sure that you really engage can be good and it's important, but also it can make other people feel like they're not as important or you're not valuing what they have to say. Number 9, we're rolling through. Again, tell me if you guys have any questions or comments about anything with communication, how you deal with it, or if you have a scenario. Number 9 says invalidating feelings. This is minimizing or dismissing someone else's emotions, rather making them to feel disrespected. So we kind of talked about this a little bit in another one where we were saying, when you invalidate someone's feelings, you say that feeling isn't valid. That hurt my feelings. And you go, that's stupid. That shouldn't hurt your feelings. Well, it did. So whether you think it should have or not is really not the point. It did hurt my feelings. And so when we dismiss that and when we invalidate that, people do not want to share with us. I remember one time having this situation and my feelings were hurt. And I was calling a friend to talk. And she didn't necessarily invalidate, but what she did felt very much like minimizing. And I was saying something and I was just really in my feelings. And what happened was I said something and she goes, yeah, it's like that sometimes. And just kind of minimized, I was feeling like this was a deeper thing and she just kind of blew it off a little bit. And I just remember going, oh my gosh, I'm not going to talk to this person. And be open like that with this person. Someone says a strategy we use is either communicating, I'm doing this and I'll give you my attention in a minute, or we will say I'm doing XYZ, but I'm just letting you know I'm listening to you. Yes, that's something that I've had to do a lot, especially that last one. I'll say I'm still listening. So even if someone's talking and I know I'll think about something I need to do and I'll say I'm still listening. Why? Because I want to let that other person know that I'm not just walking off, I'm not just doing something. I am still actively listening. And once you're done, you need to come back and re-engage in that conversation. So the next thing was we were talking about invalidating. You want to make sure that you don't say things like you're just overreacting when someone's sharing their feelings, because then they don't know, especially your partner, because then they're going to say, I don't want to say it because you're going to say I'm overreacting. I don't want to share with you because you're just going to do this. So then you're going to have 2 or 3 things working against you in healthy communication. They're assuming what you're going to do, right? and you are invalidating. And so then you hit those walls. And a lot of times, a lot of these things start to clash. You'll have one person overgeneralizing and another person stonewalling and another, and so all of these start to work together against the healthy communication that you're going for. So invalidating feelings is definitely not. One way to solve this is to acknowledge their feelings with statements like, I understand you feel upset. Okay. This again goes back to, you don't necessarily have to agree, but you can acknowledge that it bothers them. And then you can even provide a different perspective. So no one's saying you can't provide a different perspective. We're saying acknowledge what they're telling you without saying that they are wrong for telling or for feeling that. They aren't wrong for their feelings. However, giving them a different perspective may cause their feelings to shift. Okay. Number 10, sarcasm and passive aggressiveness. How many of you are sarcastic kind of naturally? I know I can be. I can be kind of sarcastic. It'll just come out sometimes before I'm even thinking about it. The problem is when you're not being sarcastic, people may assume you are. And also the problem with sarcasm itself, it can open that door for a lot of misunderstanding. And passive aggressiveness, it goes together. Sarcasm and passive aggressiveness. What is passive aggressiveness? It is the idea of, I pretend that something doesn't bother me, but it really does, and I'm going to get you back at the end. So using sarcasm or indirect comments to express frustration without addressing an issue head on is problematic because the issue doesn't ever get fully resolved. So an example is, oh, sure, because you're so helpful, instead of saying, hey, here's my real issue, here's my real concern. So being direct with your concern in a respectful way helps you to have a more direct, clear path to the solution. The goal of communication is to come with good solutions, to create understanding, to foster kind of a sense of unity, right? And so it is not to win. It is not a me against you if we're talking healthy communication. So I encourage you all to really work on improving your communication. I encourage you to say, if I know I struggle with communication, or if this is something that I've dealt with, if people constantly tell me they don't understand, or I often feel like I'm not being understood, or that there's always conflict, take some time to say, I need to learn these skills. You can learn these skills. There are tons of books. You can also, if this is a romantic relationship that seems to keep coming up in, or relationships within your family, maybe getting some marital counseling or some family counseling so that you can improve these skills and also improve those relationships, thus improving your mental health. So it is going to be so important. Sorry, I got a little sinus issues, but we are healed in Jesus' name. So I think it's really important that we continue to make sure that we are improving and practicing healthy communication skills. You're not going to get it right every time. You're going to mess up. I've been teaching about communication for years. I don't get it right every time. I mess up. The key is to recognize, hey, I could have done that differently, and I'm going to keep practicing to do it better. And I own it. You know what? I wasn't paying attention. Let me stop. I apologize. You have my full attention. Hey, I just made this assumption. Another thing, and I didn't put it on here, to me, one of the big things you deal with when you're talking communication is people have not dealt with their own internal filters. And filters are basically how we see life. And if you have not dealt with how you see life, if you see life from a really negative perspective or a really positive perspective, it is going to impact how you hear things. If you are hearing from the trauma filter, if you are hearing from a insecure filter, it is going to impact how you hear it and how you respond to things. And so healing, again, goes right back to getting some help. If you know you have those areas in your life where you're not healed, yes, it's going to show up in how you communicate, because you're going to communicate more defensiveness. We talked about that. You're going to communicate in a more defensive way because you are too afraid to be able to even own that you may have had some responsibility, because now you are internalizing any responsibility to mean that you're not good enough. And so all of those things need to be worked out. And if you don't work out your own stuff, it's going to show up in how you communicate. Okay. That is so key. It's so important. And it's paramount that you do some internal work, because me teaching these skills and in telling you, hey, don't be defensive, it's going to almost be automatic that you get defensive if you've not done enough work to be able to take ownership. You have to have done some work to even have the capacity to take ownership for your role. I know that may sound like a lot, but if you've not done enough self-work, sometimes you won't even be able to take ownership because you don't have the capacity, because any level of taking ownership for you has been internalized as another example of why you're not good enough. And so you see, keep having these cycles of people saying you're doing these things and you blame everyone else and you're wondering why you can't break free. It's because you need to stop, do some internal work to heal, so you can say, I can say I messed up and it doesn't take away from who I am. I can say I didn't communicate that well and it doesn't take away from my worthiness and the fact that I'm still loved and lovable. It doesn't take away from the fact that I'm still deserving of, certain things. And so I think it's really important that we do the work so that we don't tie our identity to some of these skills. Okay. So what do I want you to do? I want you to make a commitment today that you're going to work on improving your communication skills. I want you to make a commitment that you're going to reach out and get a book, seek a professional. You're going to do something to improve yourself so that you're going to grow and be better, because the more you can communicate your thoughts, your feelings, and your needs, the better, stronger you're going to be able to be resilient with your mental health. So again, that's all I have for today. I didn't have a long drawn out. What I want you guys to do is reach out if you know you need some help with communication. Let me pull up. I think I have. Um, you can call me at my office. The office number is 470-410-9790. Again, that's 470-410-9790. Or you can send me an email, and it's my first name at gmail.com, Tenitria@gmail.com. And reach out if you say, I do need to work on some communication and I'm lacking in this. All of these things. The great thing about communication skills is that they are just that. They are skills. Skills are things that you can learn. You don't have to be born with these skills. They are things that we can learn. And even if you say, I have good communication, you can always improve. We can all improve on these skills. So if you know you need some help in this area, don't keep dragging it out, right? Don't keep saying, I know I need help. Reach out and get some help. Next week, join me right back here. We're going to have Saniqua White, who is also a clinician, and she's going to be talking about social and emotional intelligence. I'm really excited. She teaches a class about social and emotional intelligence. And so I'm looking forward to having her join me back next week as we talk about how to improve and how to grow in our social and emotional intelligence. That's something a lot of us really need to grow. And she works with teenagers and young adults. And so we're going to really focus in on how we can improve and grow our social and emotional intelligence. I hope you join me back here next week. Again, if you need me, let me know, reach out to me, and you guys have an amazing week. Bye-bye.